Hey, T, from the Out of This World story. What's the farthest you've gone to climb the corporate ladder? Today, on our relationship management takes a whole new first story, meaning my wife got promoted, started sleeping around, and one of her employees added her I squeezed her dry on the divorce. I, 45M, have been married to my wife, 42F, for about 18 years now. She works in marketing at the regional branch of a pretty well-known company, and I work in a senior role at a software company. We have both been relatively career-focused go-getters, and I think that's part of what drew us to one another. You likely won't be surprised to hear that we don't have any children, but we've never really felt like we wanted them. I personally don't think anyone should take the decision to have kids lightly. In a marriage as long as ours, we've never had any issues regarding unfaithfulness, which is something I've always been thankful for. I've always felt like we were too busy climbing the ladder to be fooling around. That is likely a stupid assumption because I know anyone who wants to cheat can make time for it if they really want to. But there simply wasn't any reason for me to suspect her of infidelity, and I used that notion to buttress my trust. The worst part is that, until it happened, I didn't even know better. There were literally no signs as far as I know. Maybe if I had paid more attention I would have seen it, but I'm getting ahead of myself. The entire thing started when my wife got a promotion at work about a year ago. She works extremely hard and has been at her company for over a decade. She came home one day to tell me she got a major promotion and was now in an executive position at the company. That was huge because, as I've said, we've always been very career-focused. There were signs that she was going to be chosen for the promotion, but we simply weren't sure. So it was huge when it was confirmed. The position came with new responsibilities, but it also came with a massive pay increase, which was, of course, one of the best parts of the deal. For the most part, nothing really changed. She was keeping slightly later nights, though nothing too crazy. And if you're a top marketing executive, it's not surprising that your hours might be a bit longer, at least in the initial period as you get acclimated to the role. There were days when she'd get back early, which was nice, but for the most part, instead of getting back around 6 p.m., like she used to, it'd be around 7:30 p.m. I told her to take it easy every once in a while, but we are both workaholics, so I knew my words wouldn't change much. It was about 2 weeks ago that things changed quite a lot. It started with a message that somebody sent me on LinkedIn. I'm always ready to answer messages because it's all about business for me. The message was simply a greeting, so I checked the person's profile before I responded. They worked at the same company as my wife, though their role was clearly junior. It was a lady, so I'll just say her name was Suzette. I responded to her with a similar greeting, knowing she'd eventually tell me what she wanted. But it wasn't until the next day after work hours that she replied. She asked me if I was my wife's husband, and I told her that I was. At that point, I knew it had nothing to do with business, and my first thought was that this was some pathetic girl trying to poach a married man or something. I really couldn't come up with another reason why someone like her would message me and lead with a question like that. I answered in the affirmative. I really would like to talk to you about something private, but I don't know if you're open. It's about your wife, she added in a separate message. At that point, I started to feel very anxious. I thought something might have been wrong with my wife, or maybe she had an accident, but this message had been sent since yesterday, so it was definitely something else. I started to wonder whether my wife was too combative or bossy at work and was essentially a bully. I figured that was what she wanted to report to me, perhaps before reporting it to HR. So I told her that I was open to hearing what she had to say. She proposed meeting in person at a neutral spot, but I didn't feel comfortable with that. So I told her to say what she wanted to say right here. I needed written proof of whatever it was. She seemed hesitant, but eventually agreed. She sent me a paragraph, and it was very shocking to read. I don't know if you're the kind of person who prefers ignorance or whether you would want to know, but I know with certainty that your wife is sleeping with some of the junior employees. Maybe you both have an arrangement, and if so, please forgive me for intruding. But I think it wouldn't be fair for you to be in the dark about this. I really beg that you don't mention my name if you do decide to confront her. I know this could cost me my job, but I'm really just trying to do the right thing, and I hope you can appreciate that. I read that message about 5 times before what she was saying actually started to sink in. She was saying that my wife was sleeping with junior coworkers. Was that something I could even believe? I hadn't seen a single sign of it. She never seemed to smell like anyone else's perfume, and she never acted even mildly different when she came home from work. The only thing I could point to was her coming home later than she used to, and that certainly could align with this new theory. It took me quite some time before I replied. I told her that I was grateful she told me and that her admission would be saved with me. About 10 minutes later, a bunch of questions started jumping into my head. How many employees? When did this start? Did they do things at work? How did she even know about it? I asked her every one of these questions in a single message. I don't know for sure, but at least two, because I overheard them talking about it. That's how I found out. Maybe it was some kind of inside joke, but they sounded serious, and they tend to work late nights. I assume they might be doing things in the building. But I don't have an answer for that. I heard their conversation about 2 months ago, and it's been eating me up. I saw her whispering to one of these guys somewhere discreet, and that's what brought it back to the forefront of my mind. I just had to say something. And I'm sorry it took me so long. I report directly to her, so I feel like a traitor. I don't hate or dislike her, but it just wasn't right. Honestly, most of me believed this lady, but I couldn't understand why. Maybe it just seemed so improbable that someone would go to these lengths to lie to me. Could this be some workplace rival trying to ruin her family life? I couldn't know, and because I hadn't even had an inkling of doubt about my wife, part of me didn't want to believe it. But for some reason it seemed credible. I thanked the lady extensively. And I told her I would act on the information as I thought appropriate, but she would be left out of it. I wanted to tell my wife about it and see her reaction, or simply confront her, but it was going to be so easy for her to deny it. It was clear as day that my best choice was to see what I could dig up. That way, I'd either be able to feel like there was no evidence and debunk what the lady told me, or I'd find something to corroborate it, and then I'd take things from there. So I decided to be patient and get a good opportunity to do my snooping. When my wife came home that night, things were normal, and I did my best to act as normal as possible with her. It wasn't too hard because I wasn't entirely convinced. My chance to snoop around came about 4 days later when my wife went to the salon to get her hair done. She almost always went around with her laptop, but in this case she didn't. Her password isn't a secret to me, so I was able to log right in, and since she uses a MacBook, I was able to look at her messages. Based on what this lady had told me, I was looking for conversations that seemed to be with younger men who were employees of hers. I could hardly recognize any of the names though, so I decided to simply go through as many of those messages as possible. I saw a preview of a message with a text, "I'll call you when I get back, so you ... and the sender, DoorDash. I could have laughed despite myself. So I opened it up and started to go through the entire thing. Apparently she had saved the contact, which belonged to some guy called John, as DoorDash to make things less suspicious if I just happened to see a message from him pop up. At that moment I was absolutely furious. And by the time I got to the point where they were sending steamy texts back and forth, I almost lost my mind. He had sent her pictures, she hadn't sent him any, and she responded very positively to his. At one point I realized that I had been staring blankly at the screen for a few minutes. Honestly, it's hard for me to express how heartbreaking it was to discover that. I decided to leave the chat, but I made sure to keep as much as I could record as evidence. After that, I went back to the chat to continue scrolling through and looking for other people that she was having affairs with. I'm not going to bore you all, but there were 2 other employees. I could tell they were employees because work was mentioned in like 5% of all the messages, while the rest was just explicit stuff. Judging by their images, none of these men could have been over the age of 30, and that was making things a lot worse in my head. I took all the evidence that I could get, and honestly I'm quite baffled on what to do next. Is it as easy as just confronting her and then going for a divorce? Is that really all that I'm going to do? This is a woman who comes home every day, kisses and hugs me, and acts like there's absolutely nothing wrong. We've slept together several times since her affair started, and now I know that it is an absolute priority that I get tested. I'm going to do that, but I want to figure something out, and I need opinions on it. Should I just leave it at divorce, or should I hit her harder than that? Should I find a way to really hurt her? Because this is the worst form of betrayal, and I genuinely can't stomach her anymore. Get it, I'm just finishing a long day of work, and I appreciate all the advice and comments that I've received regarding my predicament. Someone said that I only have one chance to get back at her, because once I've divorced her and left those years behind, I won't be able to act on my pain. I know this isn't something that I'll stop feeling anytime soon, so I'm ready to make sure I use this chance to get back. I'm not going to stoop to the level of cheating back. I don't even have the urge to do that. I'll figure something out though, and I will update you all when I get to that point. Well, it sounds like your wife really did take her job to heart when she said, climbing the corporate ladder. I mean, who knew she was so committed to networking in more ways than one? On a serious note, though, discovering something like this must feel like getting a software update that crashes your entire system. I guess she wasn't just debugging code at work, huh? At least now you have concrete evidence that she's been multitasking, balancing spreadsheets and steamy texts. If you decide to confront her, maybe ask if this was her version of work-life balance gone terribly wrong. And hey, at least you found out now instead of being blindsided later. Who knows, maybe you'll get a CEO of revenge promotion out of this after all. She did show you the importance of seizing opportunities, even if it's just in the wrong department. Update. Hey everyone, I wrote an earlier post about my wife who was promoted and started cheating on me with her junior employees, about 3 of them that I know about. It's been several months since then, and I forgot about updating you all in the midst of all the drama in my life. But now that things are over, trust me, it came to mind, and I'm here to tell you all how things played out. It's all good news. So when I finally decided that I was going to confront my wife about the entire thing, I made sure to go and get an STD test done first. They found gonorrhea. Fortunately, I was asymptomatic, and I was given a prescription to get it treated. I was super pissed off, though, because she's the only woman I have slept with since we got married, so I certainly didn't get it from anyone but her. She likely got it from one of her new sexual partners. It was at that point that I was certain that I was going to confront her. When she arrived at home that night, I was in the living room, and I asked her to sit down before she could even take off her coat. She seemed concerned, but I don't think she knew exactly what was going on at that point. "I know you've been cheating on me" was exactly how I said it to her, and I watched as she deflated and held her face in her hands. I mentioned the names of the people she was cheating on me with, at least the ones I had confirmed. I basically told her everything I knew, though I didn't tell her how I found out. "One of your boyfriends gave you gonorrhea, which you gave to me too." I remember holding up the test in front of her face, and she peeked at it before hiding her face again. Honestly, it was pissing me off. I sat there waiting for her to say something. She wasn't crying, and I knew that she had heard everything I said. It took about 3 minutes before she looked up, shook her head, and said, "I'm sorry. I'm really sorry." The way she said it would have worked if she had scratched my dream car, but not for cheating on me with multiple men. I don't even have any excuse. I can't defend myself. I thought you would never find out. I don't even know how you found out right now. I hate myself for doing this to you. I'm so sorry. Towards the end, her voice started to quiver, but genuinely, it didn't mean very much to me. I could see she was crying at this point, but she wasn't sobbing or anything. It didn't move me. "You're not sleeping here tonight. Find somewhere else. I'm going to be looking for a divorce lawyer first thing in the morning, and I suggest you do too, so we can make this fast." It was only at that point that she said the only thing remotely close to begging, "Baby, we've been together nearly 20 years, can't we?" And then she trailed off. I think she wanted to ask if we could work things out, but I think she recognized that wasn't possible considering how deep her transgressions were. In response, I only told her that I'd wait in the living room while she packed any of the things she needed for the next week. We'd arranged for her to get more of her stuff later. She stood up and went to the bedroom after that, and that was all that was made out of our conversation, probably the most mature way to react to an F-up of that magnitude. She eventually left the house, and the next phase was the divorce stage. We both got lawyers, the papers were served and signed very quickly, and we eventually got into the proceedings. Fortunately for me, I had all the evidence of her infidelity, including my STD test, and it was presented in a very effective way by my divorce lawyer, who was a total rock star. Things went on for quite a bit, but ultimately ended in my favor because my ex-wife's promotion meant that she started earning significantly more than me, and I ended up getting a pretty nice alimony judgment. Even though I really do not need it, I'll use it to pay for a hobby or two when it comes. The house was a tough one because we co-owned it, but her higher income meant she'd be better set to find a new residence. I got that one too. We each had cars, and she kept hers naturally, but there was no easy way for me to get that from her. As things went, that was how we finally split ways for good, and I was very happy with what I got. I wasn't done, though I really wanted to go after her affair partners, but after really thinking about it, I decided not to. These people were employees, and it was hard to be sure that they weren't coerced into it at the start, regardless of how much they seemed to be enjoying it later on. She took advantage of them as their boss, and I decided it was too messy and not worth the effort to get on them. However, regarding her, It was easy for me to make a report to HR at her company from an anonymous address. I had to let them know that one of their top-level executives was coercing junior employees into sleeping with her, and I recommended they start an investigation. That happened, and long story short, she was found to be guilty of the allegations. Several junior employees directly beneath her were questioned, and there seemed to be a fourth person that I never found out about. The lady who had exposed the affairs to me in the first place was feeding me insider updates because all I got officially was an email telling me an investigation was commencing and an investigation had been completed. Her punishment? She lost her job. I know it won't be too hard for her to find a new job based on merit, but with sexual misconduct allegations following her around, she's not going to have an easy time. As far as I know, she's still searching up until now. And yes, I know it jeopardizes my alimony, but I really didn't need it to survive. Plus, she's got more than enough money in the bank to still fulfill her payments. If she doesn't, I don't mind going to court for her to figure it out somehow. That's not my problem. We've probably spoken twice since the divorce, and it was all about formalities related to splitting our lives up for good. I personally don't want to have to talk to her ever again, and the way things are going, I probably won't need to. Honestly, life is good as it is, and although revenge doesn't completely erase the pain of being cheated on by your longtime wife, it does a hell of a good job at it. It feels good, and I'm glad I went through with it. Not only did you manage to catch her red-handed with the junior team, but you also got a surprise Gary delivery from her DoorDash service. I guess in her new executive role, she really mastered the art of employer relations. As for her post-DoorDash delivery job hunt, I guess her new skill set includes executive-level networking, though I doubt her LinkedIn endorsements will list expertise in workplace fraternization. And kudos on the HR report move. She might have lost her job, but at least now she's got a glowing recommendation for her next job. Great at climbing corporate ladders, not so great at keeping them straight. Seriously though, it sounds like you've navigated this with a blend of clarity and just the right amount of revenge. Here's to hobbies funded by alimony and a life without Garia. What do you think of Ops Revenge? What would you have done? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and thank you for joining us today. Be sure to like and subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on our next video. Until next time.